Hello everybody, this is Mr. Andraco, recording from Biology in the Basement. I swear I'm here, you can hear my voice. I'll show my face. Hello everybody, I'm here. The purpose of this video is to go over your reproduction and development terms, as well as some other basic structures and processes related to the human reproductive system, reproduction itself, as well as development. And as you can see here, we are going to learn about the rectangle of life. So, without further ado, let's have a fact of the day so that we can get started. And that is that Kleenex was invented during World War I to be used as filter paper for soldiers who were wearing gas masks. Why were soldiers in World War I wearing gas masks? I'm asking you. Right, we learned about mustard gas, right, and how it's just chlorine gas, even though you mix it with something dangerous like sodium, and you get table salt, if you remember that one. So Kleenex, something to help out soldiers during a chemical attack, now became a product. So there's your fact of the day for you. So let's get started. This used to be a quiz question where I left out all the blanks, or at least some of them, and you would know the terms to fill in. The rectangles represent the stages of the terms we've covered, and these purple oval-y things, they represent the processes that are involved. So I would like to go through this with you very quickly, and hopefully you can either draw this while I'm going through this. You can have your notes out alongside you, and you can do the terms right along with me. If not, you can just wait till I fill it all in and then pause the video and draw yourself a nice little pretty picture. Either way, hopefully while you're watching this, you are yelling out the terms before I do. That's my goal, right? Like this guy right here, right? This swimmy thing that contains one N, right? One N meaning 50% of DNA, right? This is a haploid cell, and since it's got a tail, we know that this is a sperm. Its counterpart, also haploid cell, half of the DNA. This is an egg. Right? So that's why these are in the rectangular boxes, because these are names of things or stages, right? But then, of course, we have an oval, so that means we have a process coming up. It looks like egg and sperm are joining in the process of, you got it, fertilization. Okay, then that gives you the first cell. You know that as a zygote. Right, and then we don't stay as one cell forever. Actually, as we're traveling down the fallopian tube, we begin the process of mitosis. Now, there's something very important to note, that mitosis doesn't just take place right here. Mitosis takes place here and all the way through, right? As we duplicate our cells through repair and replacement of cells, we go through mitosis. So it's not just here, it's everywhere in this whole process. Okay, continuing. Once we get a solid ball of cells, right, we have a morula. We go through some more mitosis, giving us this hollow ball of cells, which we call a blastula. Now this blastula will fold unto itself in a process called gastrulation. right? And obviously, that gives us a gastrula with different layers that start to become different parts. But before we get to that, as you can see, a morula, a blastula, and a gastrula, right? These are all undifferentiated cells, right? They're just a ball of cells. And the general term that we use for a ball of cells is embryo. This is the early stages of development of the fertilized egg. And so we have this ball of cells where they're all the same. But obviously, right, we need to start to form other body parts, right? And so from the cells going to be the same to specializing or becoming different, it's just that simple. Differentiation. Right? And that gives you a fetus. Right? Sorry about the alien drawing. You know how great my artwork is. Okay, now we have a process, and that process is birth, where we get the baby out of the body. Now, I always laugh at myself when I have this, right? Because it's just a baby laying there. But of course, this is, the infant stage, right? 0 to 2 years, dependent on mom, right? And then we get into the child stage, where we're walking, we're talking, right? We're like a little human, but we are still not technically mature. Then we enter what is called our adolescent years. Right? Anywhere from, usually females start earlier than males, but males will continue growing until, like, you guys will have a growth spurt, many of you boys, in your, like, freshman year of college, where you're going to come home and your parents are like, dude, you're like 3 inches taller. Anyways, so this will go on for a long time. The key is to know that your adolescent years are when you are going through a process called puberty. Right? Most of you have gone through the big major changes of puberty, but it is still continuing. But in the eyes of science, I always like to preface this, in the eyes of science, you are considered an adult. And adults, in the eyes of science, right, a mature member of any species, when it is considered an adult, it has the ability to reproduce, right? Whether it's male or female, it is able to go through this process that produces egg or sperm called meiosis. Thus completing the rectangle of life. Okay. So, there's the first one. I'm leaving you a second to pause the video and draw it. Now, trigger warning. Trigger warning. Trigger warning. Yes, it is the full female reproductive system. Sorry to just drop that on you like this, but this is just the easiest way to do this. These are the two most common things that the Regents wants you to know, and since I'm still teaching by those standards, I want to make sure that you understand this. This is helpful information, not just for the Regents, but just in life, is knowing all your parts, your processes, and everything that we've gone through. So, let's start here, right? This is what we refer to as the ovary. right? We've learned the ovary is a gland producing estrogen and progesterone, as well as a gonad producing this guy right here, pointing specifically to the one N, and that is the egg, right? Ovaries produce hormones as well as the haploid gametes we call eggs, right? The egg is surrounded by a group of smaller cells preparing it for release, which we call the follicle. Right? Now let's move our attention over here, right? Because this side shows, I didn't want to clutter up it too much. Of course, this only happens on one side usually at a time. Sometimes two eggs come out of each side, but not as common. Anyways, the egg will break from the follicle and be swept up into the, well, we'll call that now the fallopian tube. Right? This process of the egg releasing from the ovary is called ovulation. Right? It travels down the fallopian tube. Right? One other thing to note is the fallopian tube is where fertilization occurs. Sorry, I'm writing this upside down, but it's a very important point, okay? One other thing to note is that you may have heard of ectopic pregnancies. What happens is, as you can see, there's a gap in between the fallopian tube, or oviduct, as it's sometimes called. And what can happen is the egg can make it to the outside and get stuck here, okay? That is what's called ectopic, right? Ecto usually meaning on the outside, right? We want an endo, inside the womb development. And so that's why ectopic pregnancies usually cause such problems, because there's not the network set up here as there is here. But let's move on. So let's get the rest of these terms out of the way first, right? This is pointing to this general area, which we call the uterus. This is what will become the womb. Okay? The narrow neck of the uterus is the cervix. The birth canal, where the baby leaves the body, is the vagina. Okay? Other terms that we should talk about while we are covering the female's reproductive structure is that the terms related to the menstrual cycle, right? We have the follicle, right? The first stage is the follicle preparing the egg for release. Then we have the egg releasing on day 14, right? And then during that time, we have the buildup of what is called the corpus luteum, right? That stands for yellow body. Corpus, right? Body. Luteum is yellow. The yellow body is building up for the process of this fertilized egg to implant, right? This is implantation, right? Of course, one key thing to remember is to build up this tissue, right? Blood vessels had to go into this area, right, to feed these cells. And so, if implantation does not occur, then we must flush the uterine lining from the body which we refer to as the process of menstruation. This is usually how I answer the question as to why the heck is there blood involved? This seems very weird, right? Well, we're building up tissue. To build up tissue, which are cells, cells need nutrients. To give them the nutrients they need, we need a fresh supply of blood. So a female grows this, and every month, if it does not get fertilized, then it has to flush this system. And since it's basically using muscle contractions to shake this loose, it's very uncomfortable. Water is involved, right, with the bloating to flush out this uterine lining, which also includes blood because there were blood vessels used to build this tissue. So that is how menstruation occurs, in the simplest of terms that I can give you. So I think I've covered all the terms for the female as well as the rectangle of life. So hopefully you're taking a picture of that, or you are drawing your own picture and making sure that you have your labels. Okay, that's everything. And Draco out from Biology in the Basement. Have a good one.